In this lesson, 7a, we're going to learn about a new Python data type. Well, new to us. It's been in Python for a while. Called a dictionary, or in Python, a dict, D-I-C-T. So let's see what this data type is all about. Think about the data we used before for the gender and age and height examples. You did this in week 3 and 4. You used it again in week 5. At some point in your program, you probably had read in a line of code or a line of data from our comma-separated value file, and you had stripped out the new line character and you had separated it based on the commas, and you probably put something into a list that looked like this, a 3-element list. Element 0 was the string f. Element 1 might be an integer like this 17. Element 2 might be a floating point number like this 71.5. Your program had to know that the element in position 0 was the gender, the one in position 1 was the age, and the one in position 2 was the height. You probably then had an if statement similar to this. If my list sub 0 equaled f, and my list sub 1 was greater than or equal to 16, then you did something with my list 2. Maybe you were saving a list of all the heights of females between age 16 and 19. This makes your code kind of hard to understand. What if you came back to it 3 weeks later, like today? Would you remember what position 1 contained? Would you know that that was the age and not the height? Would you know that this F stood for gender? Or maybe you've done lots of programs since then and you don't remember. Is this something about F for Fahrenheit? F for female? It would be nice if our code could be self-documenting. If the index we used to identify something and the data that we used could be associated with a key and a value, instead of making the key always be a number that goes 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that's where the dict data type comes in. You can use this dictionary, called a dict in Python, to store key value pairs. Instead of having my list equals first element of the list being a string, the next one being an integer, the next one being a float, you could have my dict equals 3 different elements. I've put a curly brace here at the beginning and the end. Instead of the square bracket that indicates a list, I use the curly brace which indicates a dictionary. So I've said take the key gender and associate the value f with it. Take the key age and associate the value 17. Take the key height and associate the value 71.5. 3 elements, and they have the same data as in the list. But instead of referring to them as square bracket 0, square bracket 1, square bracket 2, I use square bracket age, gender, and height to work with individual elements. I've changed the key that I use from this integer, which might not be very meaningful to me, to this string, which is probably more meaningful to me. So how do we get the data back out? How do we subscript with dicts? The sample code from before becomes this. You probably would have had an if statement, and look how we've changed it. Instead of my list square bracket 0, we've said my dict square bracket gender. If that equaled an f, and my dict square bracket age was greater than or equal to 16, then you'd do something with my dict square bracket height. This should be more understandable to other people reading your program and to yourself after a period of time has happened and you forgot what you were doing to begin with. Order doesn't matter. There was a difference in a list between what was in position 0, position 1, position 2. But since we're identifying specific elements in our dict with a meaningful name, instead of with an arbitrary position number, we can create our dict in any order. If we do D1 is, well, the food key goes with the value bananas, the price key goes with the value of $2.49, and D2 is the price key goes with a value of $2.49 and the food key goes with a value of bananas. These two things have exactly the same 2 elements in them. Order doesn't matter in a dict. So these two are identical. If you did D1 equal D2, Python would return a true value. Now there's some other ways to get data into a dict besides just when you first create it. you can start with an empty dictionary and then add key value pairs. Here's two ways you can start with an empty dictionary. You can either say D1 equals curly brace with nothing in it, or you can say D1 equals dict, parenthesis, parenthesis. Notice this is the type of syntax that we used when we created objects that were a member of a class. And in fact, that's exactly what we're doing. A dict is a class in Python. It's just a class that's already been written for you, so you don't have to write the details of it. You just get to use it. So either of these gives us D1 as an empty dictionary. Now, there's a couple of ways we can create a dictionary that have initial values. I can say D1 equals, open the curly brace, close the curly brace, and inside, just like I did on the previous page, this key goes with this value. Key gender goes with the value, the string F. Key age goes with the value, the number 17. Key height goes with the value 71.5. Or, this is completely equivalent. I can say D1 equals dict, parentheses, and then pass it three values. Three parameters that I'm passing by name, not by position. Gender equals F, age equals 17, height equals 71.5. So this combines things we've done in the last 2 weeks. Passing parameters, these would be parameters that go to the init function in dict, and passing the parameters by the value of the keyword and not by the position, and then also using this class notation. Notice I did not put gender in quotation marks here, but I did in the previous line. When I'm creating my dictionary, key value, key value, key value inside curly braces, I put my keys, if I want my keys to be strings, I put my keys in quotes. When I do it this way, by passing it in using this class notation, I don't put the name in quotes, but it's going to create it as if gender were a string, as if age were a string, as if height were a string. But the values associated with gender, height, and age are, this one's a string, this one's an int, this one's a floating point. If this is confusing to you, go ahead and pause it, stare at these two lines. They do exactly the same thing. Okay, now, once I have a dictionary, either because I've created an empty dictionary or because I've created a dictionary with some initial values, I can mutate an existing dictionary, which means the dictionary remains, but I've changed some of the content. So, D1 square bracket quote weight quote equals 120. If weight exists as a key, it will change the value. If weight does not exist as a key, it'll create a new key value pair of weight 120. So no matter what happens, at this point, I've now got a key weight with a value 120, whether one existed before or not. I could also do d1.update and pass the update one parameter, which would be a dictionary with the key value pair weight 120. It will say, does D1 already have a key called weight? If it does, change the value to 120. If it doesn't, add a key value pair where the key is weight, the value is 120. And this third one also does exactly the same thing. D1.update and pass it in the parameter weight equals 120. This will check to see if there is a key that's called quote weight quote. Change its value to 120. And if there isn't, add it. So 3 different ways that you could modify an existing list. Now, you might want to go through a dictionary with a for loop to find all of the values. You could step through each of the keys in the dictionary by using a for loop. The order isn't guaranteed. If you run this code 5 times, you may get it listed 5 different ways. That typically doesn't happen, but it may not be the order that you entered the data into. So let's say D1 equals dict, A equals 1, B equals 2, C equals 3. So I've created a dictionary with 3 key value pairs. Now when I do for X in D1, X is going to iterate through all of those keys. And if I do print X, I get A, B, C, or maybe I'd get BCA, or maybe CBA, or maybe CAB, or so on. But I will get each one once. This for loop will go through the dictionary and give me each key exactly one time. Here's something similar. D1 equals dict, A equals 1, B equals 2, C equals 3. So it's the same dictionary, but now I don't want to print the keys out. I want to print the values associated with the keys. So if I do for X in D1, X is the keys, and I do print D1 sub X. That says, okay, maybe X is A the first time through the loop. Then I'll print D1 square bracket A. Maybe it's B. Then I'll print D1 square bracket B. So I'll either get 1, 2, 3, or 3, 1, 2, or maybe 3, 2, 1, or 1, 3, 2. I don't know what order I'll get, but I do know I will get all of them. So hopefully you can think of some ideas of how using a dict might be useful in programs that you're going to write in Python.